go through with this. You are 2.7 times as likely to commit suicide in the future because women get depressed after they have abortions. And if you're a teenager, you're 10 times more likely to attempt suicide after having this procedure done. So those are your risks. That's what inappropriate informed consent for this so-called medical procedure should say. But it doesn't say that because we can't put that restriction. That was the requirement to be able to do that was actually struck down. So what has that resulted with here in Tennessee? Well, the 8 states surrounding us either have informed consent laws or waiting period laws or enforced parental consent laws. They have the collection of things that they should have. Mississippi has an informed consent law. Our abortion rate in Tennessee is 7 times as high as it is in Mississippi. Kentucky has a waiting period. Our abortion rate in Tennessee is 4 times as high as it is in Kentucky. As a result, we have so many women coming into Tennessee to have abortions that 1 out of every 4 performed is on somebody who does not live here and couldn't get the procedure done as easily in their home state. It's easier for them to travel to Memphis or Nashville or Chattanooga or Knoxville or Bristol to have an abortion performed. So they come into the state in droves. The only 2 states in the country that have a higher out-of-state abortion patient rate are North Dakota and Kansas. I have no idea why North Dakota's there. There aren't that many performed there anyway. It's there may only be 1 or 2 providers in the state. I know why Kansas is, because Kansas has legal, very late-term abortions. You remember the name Dr. George Tiller, who was defended and protected at every opportunity by Governor Kathleen Sebelius when she was the governor of Texas. She killed several prosecutorial efforts against him to show that he was aborting babies who were much farther along than even the Kansas law allowed. So the Kansas environment is so much more permissive than ours. That's why they're ahead of us. But for us to be second only to that is awful. And it is fixable. It's fixable. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take an understanding of the issues. It's going to understand that, if we pass this, then we can have restoration of informed consent, inspection of facilities. We can have mandatory waiting periods. We can have all of the things that should be used in this issue to, at least from the standpoint of secular government, see that it's done in a way that's at least consistent with the quality of care in other fields of medicine. It's a shame that it's the way it is, but that's where we're at. And folks, if we don't do it now, it's taken 14 years to get this to where we're at. And David didn't tell you that it has the hurdles to get over to get an amendment on the ballot. You have to pass it in both houses of the legislature, House and Senate, by a simple majority one time, by a supermajority a second time, then it goes on the ballot in the same year as a governor's race. So David and other people have been working on this for a lot longer than I've been involved with it, and it's 14 years of effort that is hanging on your efforts. Planned Parenthood will spend somewhere between $3 and $10 million, those are the estimates, to produce commercials like those lies that David just showed you, to try to portray this as a war on women. They will do that. The Yes on One group is not going to be able to raise $10 million. It's just a simple fact. If I've got sheets up here that you can take with you that has a mailing address, if you want to mail a donation, if you want to go online and look at the website, you can do so. If you're so inclined, please do so, because we need the money to do whatever media we can. But this is going to be won on the grassroots level. This is going to be won because pastors and leaders in churches and membership in churches finally get off their rear ends and decide that they dislike evil more than they dislike conflict. Because for too long, the church in America has disliked conflict more than it's disliked evil. As a result, the gay agenda progresses, liberal secularism progresses, secular humanism and atheism progresses, abortion progresses. we have been losing on all those fronts. And, I heard a great speaker at my church last night who said, not just in relation to the abortion topic, but he said, if America's going to be saved, America needs revival. Revival is the only thing that's going to save America.
That's right. I agree with that.
Now, this issue will have national implications. It really will. The abortion lobby nationally does not want this to pass. If it passes, we will be the first state to do it. You see, all those years ago, 2 decades ago nearly, Planned Parenthood came up with a plan and a strategy to go after 15 or 16 states that had liberal Supreme Courts and file cases just exactly like this. And they were successful in all of them. And that's why there are 16 states in the country now where there's a state Supreme Court decision that protects abortion. And if we are able to do this, we'll be the first state to amend our state constitution to correct that issue. And if so, other states will follow suit. So this is very, very important. So we'll give out David and I have something else to finish before we do wrap up, but I'll give these sheets out. They'll be on the back, so you can take one with you. It's got a long list of blanks for names. Get your friends to sign it. Have them pledge to vote yes on one. And then when you're done, there's an address at the bottom where you can mail it to the Yes on One P.O. box, where those people and their email addresses will be put to a list where we'll correspond with them and remind them as the election approaches. Go vote for early voting. Go vote on election day. Go vote. Now, you may sit here and say, I think I counted a few minutes ago, 28 or 29 people here. You're thinking, how is this going to make a difference? This turnout is, not 100, not 500, not 1,000. I'll tell you how it'll make a difference. If everyone in here will commit to vote for yes on one, and everyone in here will commit to convince at least 10 other people to vote yes on one, and convince them to get 10 other people to vote yes on one.
That's
And
it.
this 1 hour meeting tonight will have
That's
nearly
it.
3,000 votes
Mhm.
for yes on one.
That's good. Good idea.
So
Yeah.
this is worth it.
Yes.
This was worth it for all of us to come together. And if the next generation, if those 10 for each of your 10 will then do 10 more, just, propagate it like that. But that's something to think about. That is a strategy. The Bible tells us to be wise to the strategies of the enemy. But we need some strategy of our own.
Yeah.
So we're handing you the strategy, and it is important that we follow through. David? Yeah.
Good.
We're gonna kind of do our own Q&A here, like a little bit, to break up just lecturing, and then y'all can ask some questions. One of the things that was mentioned here, just to add on to the national import, Toulouse will have national import too. I can just tell you from what I see at our own state capitol, where Republicans are increasingly unwilling to address social issues. Now, they're one Christian, but they're unwilling to address them. That here will be the message across the nation. Look, in the heart of the Bible Belt, one of the most church states in America, people just don't care enough. We can get a majority of the votes, but if we don't get the threshold number, they'll say, see, it's just the point. Nobody cares. We need to drop this from the Republican agenda. And if they can't even get enough enthusiasm ginned up in Tennessee to pass this, why should we be worrying about this over here in Ohio or New Jersey or Vermont or Indiana? You see the ripple effect? It'd be horrible. It'd be horrible. Well, now let's ask a couple of questions here, Larry. The first of which is what about cases of rape or incest?
That's a good question, and so many people will say, "Well, I don't want to vote on that because it'll take away the right for women to have abortion in those cases." That's perhaps one of the most difficult issues for a pro-life person to defend, because the person who believes that abortion is the solution to their problem is such a sympathetic victim at that point. What you need to understand at first is that because a woman has been victimized by rape or incest, doesn't mean she's not victimized by the abortion provider. And it doesn't mean that that the baby is not victimized. Perpetuating injustice doesn't make the first wrong better.
Right.
So how do you address it though in a way that's doesn't seem so spiritual, that someone who doesn't share your faith could understand? Well, I don't have to come up with the explanation on the rape issue, because Gloria Steinem, feminist activist, abortion promoter, well-known person, she came up with, she explained it herself. She said, why would you limit abortion to women who have been raped? Because you're going to force us to lie. So she said it. I'm not calling women liars. I'm not going to say that women are of such weak character that they will come in and lie and say they were raped when they weren't. Gloria Steinem said it. I don't have to be the bad guy and say it. Gloria Steinem said it. She said, why would you make us lie? Now, what have I seen in my personal practice? People do lie about things like that. Not just women, but men. There was a time when I lived in Kentucky that there was a need in my area for a physician who would do child sex abuse evaluations on little girls. And at first I just said, yeah, I'll do them, schedule them. So I had parents bringing kids in. And I had to stop and say, I will only do these evaluations when the referral comes through social services, because so many people lied when they came in. And when you got to the bottom of it and talked to the child by themselves, or got somebody else to admit when you caught them in an inconsistency, that they were coming in and lying about it because they were fighting in court for custody of a child. So people lie about those kinds of things. So saying that the cases of rape and incest must, cannot be limited because you should never limit those things, it's just, that's not the solution. If I were a legislator, which I'm not, I told my wife if I ever decided to run for office to just shoot me in the head and hide the body. But if I were, the way that I would suggest that that be handled by the legislature is that if a person is going to have a pregnancy terminated because it's the result of rape, then the rape itself, the sexual assault itself, must have been reported to the authorities within 72 hours of when it happened. Not 6 weeks later when she found out she got pregnant. Because if it's not, then who knows? It very well could not. It may have not been a rape. So we talk about wanting to protect women. Let's think for a minute and protect the teenage boys that screwed up. Because you can all envision a situation where the parents of a teenage girl who are really hacked off that their teenage girl's pregnant will force her to cry rape and get the boy prosecuted when he didn't. So the whole thing about protecting abortion, just because it's so important for rape victims, is that's a false flag. It's just a way to get people to back off on meaningful common sense restrictions on abortions. Now, if Planned Parenthood were such activists, such advocates for women, then wouldn't all the women who come in for abortion because of incest, wouldn't the cases get reported to authorities? They're supposed to. It's the law. But it never happens. I'll tell you what happens when a girl is brought to Planned Parenthood because of a conception, a pregnancy as a result of incest. They don't get reported because Planned Parenthood knows that if it was reported, then the family wouldn't have brought her in to begin with, and Planned Parenthood wouldn't have gotten money for aborting the baby. So what happens? They say, don't worry about it, we're not going to report it, let's just take care of it for her so she doesn't have to suffer through the pregnancy. And then after it's done, they give her birth control pills and send her back into the house where she continues to be incestuously violated, but she's not going to get pregnant. So the whole incest issue, the whole rape issue, those are false flags. So but this amendment doesn't necessarily outlaw it in those cases, but it allows the legislature to set policy.
Yeah, I think the important thing when somebody says, well, what about rape and incest in this amendment to say the amendment addresses that situation by making it very clear that the legislature can make provisions for situations involving rape and incest. Now, I will tell you, the flip side of that coin is there's a group out there called the Personhood Amendment folks, and I respect them. They believe that the legislature should have no authority to make any kind of rule for any kind of rape under any kind of circumstance. But you need to appreciate that at least here, when we passed the amendment the first time, or tried to pass it, we just said essentially the first sentence, nothing in the Constitution secures or protects a right to abortion. We couldn't pass that. It sounds pretty simple, right? But we couldn't pass it because the press and liberals started beating on people saying, they're so extreme. There's nothing even in here about rape or incest. You're going to force some young girl that's been raped, she won't even have a choice over her future. So we put language in there that says that the legislature, the people through the legislature, can deal with cases of rape or incest in the life of the mother. And so there is that possibility. The legislature could, if you're one of those who says, look, I don't care, you know, if a baby's a baby and it doesn't matter if it was through rape or whatever, the legislature can address that if they choose to do so. And we decided, rather than keep losing the amendment year after year, we'll go fight down in the legislature over what the statute should be. But if somebody says something, does the amendment make provisions for rape and incest? I would say the answer is, yes, it does. It makes it very clear that the legislature has the authority to address those issues.
That's good.
And then you don't have to get into, but why would we want to do it and so on and so forth. Just, you know, we'll address what those provisions should be later. The question is, should we pass the amendment? And the legislature has the authority to address cases of rape and incest. And if you'll look at it, you'll see it. And we put that language in there in part to make sure that when Planned Parenthood said that, people would read it and say, well, it says right here something about rape and incest. Planned Parenthood must be lying. So that's sort of the thing. Now, let me ask you, does the amendment itself, if we pass it, I've heard it said on the House floor by Representative Sherry Jones that this is going to ban abortion.
No, and it can't.
Can't.
It can't abort, as long as Roe versus Wade is the precedent of the land, that sets the precedent for the minimum that's allowed. But like you were explaining earlier, what we have right now is so much more permissive than Roe versus Wade. So no, the amendment does not ban abortion. The amendment cannot take us farther in Tennessee than Roe versus Wade allows any state to be. But what it does is it restores the neutrality of the Tennessee Constitution in regards to abortion and allows the elected representatives of the people to exercise the will of the people rather than the will of Planned Parenthood and 4 out of 5 Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, one of the things that I would point out here is that you're going to also hear the argument, well, you're taking away constitutional rights. I mean, we don't ever vote to do that. And that really is true. I can't think of any time that we, in our country, that we voted to take away a constitutional right. You know, I guess I don't think drinking was a constitutional right. You know, we did take away the right to buy alcohol for a period of time. But if somebody says, well, aren't we taking away constitutional rights? I'd say, actually, this amendment is putting us in line with 34 other states. The majority of states, we're out of step with the majority of states.
That's good.
And this puts us back in line with all the rest of them. Okay? Because people like to be in the majority. So we're not taking away anything that anybody else has given to anybody. 34 states that don't even have this problem. And we're just trying to get back to where everybody else is. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, I don't know what time it is, Larry. It's probably 7 o'clock.
It's 8, but I was gonna ask you this.
It's 7 o'clock over in Central Time, so I mean, Mountain Time.
But you know what, Dave, I think when we had the honor in marriage night, you had a little handout, a green piece that was a leaflet.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be made available? Because for us, I mean, I took notes and we're listening, but any type of literature, material that we can be giving out in the churches, you got?
Yeah,
It's not
Debbie,
green
stand
any longer,
Okay.
it's pink and blue.
Good, no, I agree.
but we have these, and you can go to vote yes, no. We changed-
VoteYesTN.org.
Vote yes, T, and
You go to vote yes
or you
on
can vote
one
on yes
vote.
on one.
.org, they're all
Just
connected.
keep Googling around, you'll find it.
Would,
And you can purchase as many of those as you want.
Yeah, they're-
Debbie, would you stand up?
Uh-huh.
This is Debbie Locke. She is working with the Yes on One campaign. She is a church liaison coordinator so she
Rutherford County.
she is the type of person that if you're a pastor or a leader in a church and you want someone who has worked with Yes on One to be formally trained to be able to talk about this in certain settings, then you contact somebody like Debbie. You go to Yes on One, and you can find where you can get in touch with somebody who will send you a speaker.
Is it possible this type of material, like Christian Coalition would set up the voter guides that were just sent, that we could try to raise some funds and approach individuals that this is just sent. We take the initiative, we send it to the pastors and say, we're asking you, distribute this so that your people are educated and they'll know how to vote on this? Is that?
Well, the answer is there a little bit. This is all gonna be a question of money and where our resources best spent. And right now, we're having a board meeting actually this week to talk about where are we fundraising and where can we best spend our money. And sometimes it's not, I don't just willy-nilly lay those out because I know how people are. I've seen them in the motels pulling up everything for every visitor thing within 100 miles of where they are, and they take them home and then they don't read them and they just threw 30 cents away. So, take one, read it, give it to somebody. But the problem is oftentimes with those things, you mail them out, somebody reads them, they throw them away. How many mailers do you get for campaigns? And you think, I'll get another one, you pitch it. Well, we can't just keep mailing, so we'll have to figure out how to do some of that. Now, I have a little half sheet, a sheet out here somewhere that's a grayscale thing that churches could just print like crazy, off their own copier. It's got a lot of, no, I've got a grayscale.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's this.
But it's some of the stuff on the inside. I think it was sitting outside, but no, here it is. Here it is. It's just one page. It's got the amendment language on it and some of the information about it. So you can, print a jillion of these, and we don't have any kind of copyright on it, so you don't owe us $1 per page or anything. And it gives you the Vote Yes on TN website. So,
Can we put that out?
Yeah, we
Even
can-
now,
we
or
can-
would you like to make sure we get it out?
it doesn't matter. I can put it on the back, and
Would you?
y'all can
Okay.
take them. And like I say, make as many copies of these as you want.
There's also this
What is
Run
it?
for Life, David, are you
Yes,
familiar?
yeah, that's going on in Murfreesboro,
Yeah,
right?
and if may I?
Yeah.
Tim Hooper. He's a wonderful young man. In fact, I wanted to David this verse. I was thinking about this on the way down. God challenged the prophet Jeremiah. He said, if you've gotten tired contending with footmen, how are you going to run with the horses?
Yeah.
We're in the run with the horses stage. This
That's
man
true.
has contended with the footmen for 14 years.
That's right.
But we have to start running with the horses.
Good.
Because we have got to just build momentum to get this out. And so this young man came up with this idea, Run for One. He's in Rutherford County. He has it already established, the route that's going to go through Murfreesboro. It's all set up. He's got Jim Tracy and Joe Carr are going to have teams running there. You can have a pavilion with your name on it if you're a businessman and want to sponsor it. If you're a church, you got church T-shirts, just to get the word out. Who's supporting what? But it's $25 to register, and so that will help all the money. All of this is connected with Yes on One. So he's not raising a penny for himself. He's raising all the money because this young man has a heart to one day be a Supreme Court justice. Now, that's not exciting to see young people say they want to take our country back. So his name's Tim Hooper. If you're a pastor, I have his little letter here. I can send it out to anybody, and then on your seat are one of the cards. So if you know runners, take a card, pass it on to a runner. And we hope to see thousands of people running through Murfreesboro on June 28th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One other thing I'd like to mention, and whether you're a pastor or a church leader, or you're just going to go talk to one of your pastors or church leaders, one thing some people are sometimes cautious about is we don't want to talk about things that would get us in trouble with the government. We don't want to jeopardize our tax exempt status. Well, Yes on One has a letter from an attorney that explains that you can give to any church leader, and we can get you copies of those if they're necessary. Give to any church leader who has those concerns. What the IRS tax code restricts a church from doing is endorsing a particular candidate. I can't tell you to vote for Bill Haslam or the coon hat guy. I can't tell you to vote for Joe Carr or Lamar Alexander. I can't tell you, you can't be told by church. But what the church can do is say, you need to look at these issues.
Yep.
You need to consider voting for people that will go along with these issues. And when you're not even talking about voting in particular candidates' races without naming a candidate, and you're just addressing a moral issue, this is a moral issue. No church will get into trouble for telling its congregants that life is sacred and you need to vote yes on one, and so does everyone in your family, and so do your neighbors, and so it's not going to get anyone into trouble. So,
So your pastor can say, vote yes on one. Now, are we still filming?
I can continue, or
Well,
it's not much time left.
Pause, bump.
Well, there's only there's not hardly much time left on
You didn't
the
hear me
disc.
say that,
The,
okay? You did not